In the 3rd year of our marriage, Reuben forgot my birthday. I called him. Are you coming home tonight? No. I'm celebrating with my best buddy who just got into a relationship. I nudged the best buddy lying on top of me. He's celebrating with you over there. The man's Adam's apple bobbed as he leaned down to kiss me. Then let's give a round of applause for love. Chapter 1. I had Edward's pants halfway off when I suddenly got scared. My hand involuntarily retreated. Edward raised an eyebrow, looking down at me with deep eyes. What's the meaning of this? I felt a bit uneasy. After all, you're his best friend. This isn't right. We both knew who he referred to. Edward snorted. When you were all over me in the car. It didn't feel wrong. He glanced downward. Do you think this is appropriate now? Following his gaze, I glanced down at his waist, and my face turned red. It wasn't appropriate. I had been the one to seduce Edward. To leave halfway through was indeed rude. I thought for a moment. Should I call him? Ask if he's okay with the current situation? Edward deliberately moved his hips, a mischievous smile in his eyes. No, I pushed against his abs, trying to escape, but also reluctant. After all, it's my birthday today. What if he remembers and comes back to celebrate with me? It wouldn't be good if he caught us. Then go ahead and call. Edward said this but didn't get off me. My face was pressed against his chest, my features distorted under his weight. I groped for my phone, struggling. He watched without helping. I finally reached my phone and called Reuben. Hey, are you coming back tonight? I asked. It was quiet on his end, so the sound of the shower was clear. Reuben's voice was low. No, I'm busy tonight. What's keeping you? Reuben sounded a bit irritated, his tone indifferent. Edward, my best buddy. Remember him? I tensed up. Did he know? I looked up at the man on top of me. Edward was struggling to hold back. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his full weight not entirely on me, but the crucial parts were. My face flushed. Yeah, I remember. He finally got a girlfriend, and we're celebrating. What's she like? I asked. Very beautiful, very capable. Edward likes her a lot. The shower stopped, and I heard the door open. Reuben spoke faster. All right, gotta go. Edward's calling me. The celebration's starting. Edward watched my face as I hung up. So, is your husband coming back? I shook my head. No, he said you got a girlfriend and he's celebrating with you. Edward smiled. Good friend indeed. Even knows about my new girlfriend. I felt a bit down. Reuben and I had been separated for a while. He played around a lot outside. I couldn't control him, but he never mentioned divorce. I felt he still had feelings for me. It's my birthday today, no matter how bad he was. I thought he'd come back to celebrate. I even guessed he might be delaying to surprise me. Turns out, he really forgot. Seeing my distraction, Edward was displeased. Are we continuing? I nodded. Continue. You getting a girlfriend is a big deal. Let's give a round of applause for it. But, I paused for a moment and continued. In bed. I must lead. Reuben said Edward's girlfriend is very capable. I wanted to see how capable I really was. Chapter 2. I discovered that no matter how obedient a girl is, once she lets go of outdated beliefs, liberating her body is surprisingly easy. I couldn't help but exclaim. So, I'm this open-minded. Before, Reuben said he liked me for being a good girl. I would lie on the bed, doing nothing. He would give me the best of everything. Later, when he became rich, he didn't like good girls anymore. He said I was rigid, like a dead fish in bed. I tried to learn to be open-minded. I bought several pieces of sexy lingerie, curled up in bed, waiting for Reuben. But by the time Reuben made a phone call, I had secretly changed back into my pink Hello Kitty pajamas. I couldn't be wild in front of Reuben. Unexpectedly, fueled by alcohol tonight, I became the kind of woman I never dared to imagine. I almost wore Edward out. He pressed my head down. That's enough. That's enough. I told you. I'm in charge. You can't interfere. Amused, he released his hand, placing both hands behind his head. So skilled? Did Reuben teach you? Why do you care? Just enjoy it. He hissed softly. Baby, How long have you been hungry? Chapter 3. Reuben and I were college classmates. After graduation, we got married and made our relationship official. He came from a poor family but had ambition. I was beautiful and had a gentle, soft personality. Everyone said we were a match made in heaven. After graduation, we got married. We lived a harmonious life for a year. Then Reuben suddenly became wealthy overnight, and the circles he mingled in became increasingly chaotic. Initially, he liked obedient girls the most. Now he liked wild ones the most. So, he stopped coming home much. Yesterday, I made a whole table of dishes, waiting for him to come home. By 8 or 9 at night, I still couldn't reach him on the phone. I suddenly wanted to check out the bar Reuben often visited. His secretary said he found many girls there. Sexy, wild, and unique. I put on the lace nightgown I hadn't dared to wear before, covered it tightly with a trench coat. I just wanted to check out the bar, not to do anything. I told the bartender, a watermelon juice, please. The bartender teased me. The children's play area is to the right. I was so angry. Even a stranger dared to mock me. I unbuttoned the top button of my coat, revealing my white neck and a bit of collarbone. Give me the strongest whiskey, the bartender laughed. First time here? It's on me. As I sipped my drink, a stunning man walked in through the door. The man had broad shoulders and long legs, wearing a casual suit, standing tall with an extraordinary aura. When he walked, his waist exerted force, each step resonating with my heart. Turns out, the bar didn't only have wild women, it also had wild men. I squinted with lustful eyes, even fantasized about taking him home tonight, until the man walked straight towards me. I then realized the man was Reuben's good buddy, Edward, sis-in-law. Drinking alone? Where's Lou? I don't know where he is. Edward nodded. They hung out in the same circles every day. How could he not know about Reuben's affairs? I have a business meeting with a client. His voice was low and pleasant. Okay. I continued sipping my drink. Edward went to the private room upstairs. Edward and Reuben were high school classmates and good friends. Later, Reuben and I attended the same university. Edward studied abroad. After returning, he helped Reuben get rich. I'd met him a few times. Reuben told me Edward came from a family of aristocrats, appearing gentle and polite but with an extremely cold personality. He was indifferent to women, like a monk. What a waste of a good appearance. I quickly got a bit drunk, fueled by the alcohol. I ran to the dance floor. A man kept trying to unbutton my coat. Hey, beautiful, are you hot? He asked, leaning close to my ear. No, I have a cold body. I shook my head. Let me help you take it off. He reached out, grabbing my coat, insisting on helping me take it off. No, I slapped his face. He got angry and dragged me outside. Bitch. Coming to a place like this, pretending to be chaste. Seeing he was about to drag me out of the bar, Edward came down from upstairs. I hurriedly called out to him. Edward, help me. The man dragging me immediately let go when he saw Edward, like a misbehaving schoolboy. Mr. Cheen, I didn't know she was with you, Edward coldly said. Let go of my sis-in-law. After that, I hazily got into Edward's car. He said he would take me home. The heater in the car was on full blast. I couldn't help but tug at my coat. The coat hung on my arm. Edward glanced at my exposed shoulder and turned down the heater. His voice was cold and deep when he spoke. Put your coat back on. I suddenly remembered Reuben saying Edward was cold and indifferent. A rebellious thought I'd never had in my 25 years came to mind. Sleep with him. Just tonight. I reached out my left hand and placed it on Edward's knee. Edward looked at me in surprise. Elma, what are you doing? I'm just resting it here. Not doing anything. Take it away. No, be careful, or I'll throw you out. Throw me out then. I'm just a bit dizzy and need to hold on to something to sit steady. Edward's chest heaved, lips pressed tightly together without saying a word. His side profile was sharp and clear, the lines perfect. He dressed with great taste, understated and elegant. His long, pale fingers on the steering wheel were pleasing to the eye. I wondered what he looked like under his clothes. I stole a glance at him. Edward? He noticed my gaze and looked at me warily. Do you have a girlfriend? No. He squeezed the word out between his teeth. Do you do one-night stands? I asked. He looked at me incredulously. Elma, you? Not me. A good friend of mine asked me to ask for her. Not interested, Edward said decisively. My hand on his knee regretfully stroked it. Gathering my courage, I said, Edward, I want to see what you look like. After a screeching brake sound, the car came to a sudden stop by the roadside. I hurriedly grabbed Edward's thigh to avoid hitting the dashboard. He parked the car. Everything became easier. I used all the techniques I had recently looked up online but hadn't had a chance to use on Edward's leg. That night, he went home with me. Chapter 4. When I woke up in the morning, my body felt like it had been run over by a truck. Sore all over. Last night, after I took the lead, I was so tired that I just wanted to sleep. But Edward didn't let me off. He bit my ear and said, Elma, it's my turn now. I was drunk and exhausted, like a rag doll being moved around by him. He seemed to praise me. Elma, you're very flexible. I couldn't remember much after that. Edward was still asleep, looking very content and peaceful. I thought Reuben was bad at judging people. He said Edward lived like a monk, cold and indifferent. A monk who knows so many positions? A cold and indifferent man who held me all night without letting go? I balled up my torn nightgown and tossed it to the bottom of the closet. Looking at the mirror, I saw the disastrous aftermath of last night. Then I quickly dressed and left the house. I'd heard that people who have one-night stands don't sleep together, because it's awkward to wake up together in the morning. I sympathized with Edward for his hard work last night, so I left my own house voluntarily, wandering around outside. At noon, Edward called me. Where did you go? I went out to run some errands. Reuben is back, he said. I was so scared my blood froze. He saw you sleeping in our marital bed? No, I just finished tidying up when he came back. I felt a bit relieved. How did you explain it? I said I was nearby for a meeting, got coffee spilled on me, and ran into you, so you let me come to your place to shower. Great story. I silently gave him a thumbs up. Elma, when are you going to divorce him? Edward asked. Why should I get a divorce? You slept with me and don't plan on divorcing him? All right, I admit it, the friend wanting a one-night stand was me. He gritted his teeth. Fine, Elma, you're something else. Then he hung up. As soon as he hung up, Reuben's call came in. Elma, where are you? I'm shopping at the mall. You went shopping first thing in the morning? I wanted to buy you a birthday gift. My birthday is still 6 months away. Right, I want to pick it out early to show I care. Reuben's tone softened, mixed with some guilt. It was your birthday yesterday, but it was hard to refuse Edward. Sorry, I couldn't be with you. I bought you a birthday present. Come home early after you're done shopping. You're so sweet, honey. I saw a beautiful necklace. Buy it if you like it. Your husband can afford it. Thank you, honey. I hung up and ran to the counter without hesitation. I wouldn't save money for a cheating husband. I picked out 5 gold necklaces. Each one was heavy. Why didn't I just buy gold bars? Because my friend told me that gold jewelry is considered personal property and won't be divided in a divorce. Gold bars will be divided. After Reuben cheated repeatedly, I forced him to sign a prenuptial agreement. It stated that all jewelry during the marriage belonged to me, and other assets were split in half. Reuben was sure I wouldn't leave the life of a wealthy wife, so he signed the agreement without a care. He partied outside. I enriched my gold reserves at home. I would divorce him, but I'd wait until I saved enough money. These years I didn't go out to work. I wrote novels at home. When I first signed the contract, I happened to not find my ID. I used my mom's ID and bank card. Unexpectedly, it became an advantage for me. Reuben thought I was a dependent, unable to live without him. Little did he know, I could sell a novel for millions. I'm just waiting to save enough disappointment and gold. Then I'll leave him. Chapter 5. When I got home, Reuben's face was dark. On his index finger, he had hooked a black, shredded piece of fabric, gently swaying. It was the lace nightgown Edward had torn to bits. At a glance, it looked like a tangled mess of threads. Elma, what is this? Reuben stared intently into my eyes. A rag. Bought it on sale at the supermarket. Poor quality. Fell apart after one use. A rag from Victoria's Secret? What's Victoria's Secret? I asked, pretending not to understand. I had never worn this brand before. So if Reuben knew about it, he didn't learn it from me. Reuben's face showed a hint of confusion and a trace of panic. How would I know? I just heard about it from others occasionally. My husband even knows brands of rags. So impressive. I gave him an admiring look. I opened the gift Reuben had given me. Apart from not coming home, he had always been generous. For example, this handbag was the latest limited edition. A sudden thought crossed my mind. Is Reuben this generous with other women too? If we get divorced, do I have the right to reclaim the gifts he gave to other women? I need to call my lawyer when I have time and ask about it. Reuben slowly walked towards me. After being married for a few years, I understood that look instantly. He wanted to fulfill his marital duty. When he first started playing around outside, I would cry and make a fuss. I would make dozens to hundreds of calls every day to check on him and even secretly followed him. He became increasingly annoyed with me. When I sought his affection, he was also annoyed. He didn't want to be with me, but occasionally, he would come home. Maybe he was afraid I'd get lonely and seek comfort elsewhere. He was a master of time management. He knew my body well, and the timing was always just right. Like today, but I had a full meal last night, so I wasn't hungry at all, and I couldn't let him see the marks on my body. My period came early. Not convenient. I quickly came up with an excuse. Relief flashed in Reuben's eyes. Then let's just kiss for a while. He moved towards me again, just as his lips touched my face. His phone rang. Edward, what's up? Is it urgent? I'm spending some quality time with your sister-in-law. He laughed suggestively. Anyone could tell what he was doing from the way he spoke. A few words were said on the other end. Then he hung up. Reuben gave me a few perfunctory kisses. It was uncomfortable for both of us. You don't realize until you compare. But there is a huge difference between men. Once you've experienced the best, you don't want the inferior anymore. I needed to expedite this divorce. I realized that in just one night. My heart had turned wild. Reuben, I want to visit my parents back home, I said. For Reuben, I had left my hometown and married far away. Before, he was busy with his career and couldn't do without me. Later, he played around, and I stayed to monitor him, afraid to leave. So, I hadn't been back to my hometown in years. Reuben didn't think twice. Go ahead. It's been so long since you've been back. You can stay for a while. Okay, great. I want to buy some supplements for my mom. Reuben took out a card from his wallet. Buy something nice for your mother-in-law. Don't be stingy. Reuben left, humming a tune. If I went back home, he wouldn't have to worry about coming back to fulfill his marital duties. He could indulge in wild escapades with the girls outside. I was happy too. With this excuse, I didn't have to live as husband and wife with Reuben. I would also have enough time to gather evidence of his marital infidelity. I was very happy. I couldn't understand why I had clung to him so tightly before. Like a resentful woman, I picked up my phone, intending to call my lawyer to discuss property division. Edward sent me a message. Can your body handle it? Aren't you afraid of bursting? I was speechless. Chapter 6. I packed my bags and went to a hotel. The lawyer said that collecting enough evidence of Reuben's infidelity could help me get a more favorable division of property. If I had solid evidence proving that Reuben indeed gave expensive gifts to others, as his wife, I had the right to reclaim them. Wearing a mask, sunglasses, and a baseball cap, I started following Reuben. He took a seductive, glamorous girl into an apartment. I couldn't get in. He drove a luxury car in and out of high-end clubs. I couldn't get in. I didn't know anyone else. So after thinking for a long time, I could only call Edward. Edward answered the phone slowly. Divorced? Not yet. I laughed sheepishly. Why are you calling me if you're not divorced? Can't I call you if I'm not divorced? Edward was exasperated. What do you want? That night was an accident. If you don't get divorced, I won't have a second time with you. If you want me to get divorced, agree to one request. What? Come and pick me up. Wait there. 20 minutes later, Edward took me into the high-end club. It's chaotic in here. What are you doing here? You ignore me, but I want to see you. I lied through my teeth. That night was enough to soothe my 25 years of loneliness. I didn't have the guts to do it again. Edward's chin lifted slightly, and he spoke harshly. I don't want to see you. But the smile at the corner of his eyes betrayed him. Edward opened a private room and ordered a bottle of wine. He also ordered a glass of watermelon juice. The waiter said there was no watermelon juice. Edward threw a few bills on the table. If you don't have it, go buy it. The waiter left respectfully. Can I kiss you? I asked. No, he refused. Oh, I sat quietly, but he suddenly got angry, pulled me onto his lap. If I don't agree, you won't kiss me? Why are you so obedient today? I had called him out late at night. I should offer something in return. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to call him out next time. Thinking of this, I gently kissed his lips. Just as I was about to pull away, Edward pressed me back, taking the lead. He deepened the kiss until his body heated up. I pushed him away. Not in a place like this. Then my place? I need to use the bathroom. So exciting? I said. I need to pee. Edward laughed angrily. There's one in the private room. I'm afraid it'll be awkward. I ignored his physical reaction and left the room. I peeked into each room, trying to find where Reuben was cheating. Finally, my efforts paid off. I saw Reuben and a young girl making out. I took a few photos, but suddenly a hand appeared on my phone screen. Edward looked at me with a dark expression, saying you wanted to see me. Turns out you were looking for him. Elma, you really enjoy using me, don't you? No. He's that good? Do you know how many women he's played with? What kind of hopeless romantic are you to hold on to such scum? Can you keep your voice down? I pleaded with him. No. Edward's eyes were even angrier, his voice louder. You're his wife. Why are you sneaking around to find him? Elma, where's your dignity? My eyes immediately welled up. If he had scolded me like this a month ago, I wouldn't have felt so wronged. But now that I'd woken up, he came to scold me. I wouldn't accept it. Edward kicked open the private room door, shouting at the couple inside, Reuben, your wife is here. Reuben pushed the girl away, hurriedly putting on his clothes. But he had seen the world. By the time he came out, his eyes had regained their calm. He looked at me with disgust. Elma, you said you were going to visit your parents. Turns out you were spying on me? I feel suffocated being with you. You're like a dead fish in bed, but so controlling out of it, always wanting to monitor my every move. Do you know, the more you push me, the less I want to come home. I laughed. You're good at turning the tables. Attacking first. Reuben, don't use your business tactics on me. Now you think I'm too controlling? When you asked me to quit my job to take care of you, cooking porridge and hangover soup every day, you didn't mind my control? When you drank yourself to sleep on the sidewalk, and I dragged you home, you didn't say I was monitoring you? Now that you've got power, you can't stand me. Divorce. Reuben, let's get a divorce. Chapter 7. In front of Edward. I mentioned divorce. Reuben felt humiliated and agreed on the spot. Fine. Let's divorce. Let's see how you live without me. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum. After all, this wasn't the first time I had mentioned divorce. It wasn't until I brought a lawyer to his office, listed our assets, and presented evidence of his infidelity, that he finally panicked. Elma, I didn't mean to divorce you. Let's calm down. I am very calm. We split the marital assets 50-50. If you sign the papers immediately, I won't pursue the gifts you gave to other women, mainly because it was too much trouble. My mom said she found a small villa for me in our hometown, just waiting for me to finalize the assets to pay the down payment. My mom also said they built a university town in our hometown, full of young, handsome male students. I was eager to go back and take a look. I will not agree to the divorce, Reuben said. The smile on my face faded. Then I'll have to sue for divorce. It's time-consuming and costly, and it won't be good for your reputation. I said I'm not divorcing. What successful man doesn't play around? Didn't we get through the first few years like this? I give you money. You turn a blind eye. Be the rich wife. and live a life many people envy. But if I divorce and get the assets, I can still live that life. Elma, I don't believe you don't love me anymore, and I don't believe you can bear to leave me. Just give up on this. It seemed amicable divorce was hopeless. That afternoon, I went to court and filed for a lawsuit. As a result, Reuben, who used to avoid coming home, now came home early every day after work. He bought me flowers and thoughtfully gave me gifts. Each time, I calculated in my mind how much of our shared assets he was wasting on these superficial things. He even wanted to resume marital relations. But whenever he touched me, I felt annoyed. Finally, I placed a kitchen knife under my pillow. When he approached, I raised it. He stood at the door, pouring out his heart. Elma, you have to believe me. I only love you, and you'll be my only wife in this lifetime. What I do outside is just for fun, all for work. I never intended to divorce you, and I resolutely refuse to. Elma, from now on, I'll come home right after work and won't go out looking for women. Can we live a good life together? I refused. No. If you try sneaking in at night again, I'll cut you with this knife. Reuben pulled his head back in fright. During the day, I was lying on the sofa petting the cat. Edward sent me a message. Divorced yet? Not yet, but soon. All right. Let me know when it's done, and I'll move in. I was speechless, but honestly, that night was truly satisfying. I often reminisced about it. Edward was a high-quality man. Before going back to my hometown, I planned to meet with him again, with him as my benchmark. I wondered if the average male students could satisfy me. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but smile. Elma, what are you smiling about? So happy? Reuben suddenly asked. I had clearly hired a maid to cook, but he said it affected our marital bond and sent her away, putting on an apron himself to cook. At that moment, he stood there with an apron on, holding a ladle, looking at me affectionately. I quickly deleted the chat history. Not divorced yet. I couldn't leave any evidence. I ignored him and went to the bathroom to shower. When I came out, I saw Reuben holding my phone. My heart tightened. Had I deleted everything? I shouldn't have taken any explicit photos with Edward, but the way Reuben looked at me was strange, making my heart pound. Reuben spoke with difficulty. Elma, why do you have so many? I held my breath. Did he find out? How should I explain? Reuben then weirdly smiled. Why do you have so many porn pictures? Damn. Scared me to death. I snatched the phone. Didn't you say I was like a dead fish in bed? Learning some advanced techniques from abroad. Reuben's eyes lit up. Elma, you still care about my feelings, right? If you had this realization earlier, I wouldn't have strayed. What man doesn't like a fling? After tasting wildness outside, I can settle down at home. Elma, after dinner, let me test your learning progress. He had a mischievous smile. In my younger years, I might have indulged. Now, it just disgusted me. I waved my hand. No, this is for after the divorce. Nothing to do with you. Reuben's face turned dark immediately. Chapter 8. That day, I was in the bedroom writing. My latest novel was doing very well, and the editor said it had a good chance of being adapted into a TV series. If that happened, it wouldn't just be tens or hundreds of thousands of small money anymore. I was writing about the night when the male and female leads first confirmed their feelings for each other, their ambiguous pull and push. In the past, when I wrote scenes like this, I would think about my romance with Reuben, but now, thinking about him made me want to vomit. So I thought about Edward instead. But that night, we were completely uninhibited. Nothing like the innocence of young love. I wondered what Edward's first love was like. He was so handsome, came from a wealthy family. Was he nervous during his first kiss? Did he develop all these skills back then? I was lost in my thoughts. Reuben came knocking on the door. I frowned and ignored him. Reuben said, Elma, open the door. Edward is here. Edward? The Edward who was just in my mind. Unclothed? Among Reuben's friends, there seemed to be only one named Edward. I closed my laptop and opened the door. Sure enough, it was the Edward the first was thinking of. Reuben scolded me. Why are you coming out to greet guests dressed like this? I lowered my eyes. Today I was wearing a pink Hello Kitty outfit, without any underwear. I can wear whatever I want. It's none of your business. I said irritably. All right. You don't need to deliberately provoke me. I won't fall for it. Reuben smiled ingratiatingly. I asked Edward to come and talk to you. Edward has witnessed our relationship over the years and knows how hard it has been for us to get to this point. Listen to his advice and stop thinking about divorce. Reuben wanted Edward to persuade me not to divorce? Reuben really had no judgment in people. Now, besides me, Edward was the one who most wanted me to get divorced so he could move in. But it was understandable. It was said that Reuben and Edward originally had an average relationship in high school. Later, some thugs bullied Edward, and Reuben stood up for him. This moved Edward, who had been indifferent since childhood. Since then, he always included Reuben in anything good, including helping Reuben start a business and make money after graduation. That night, when I had a fight with Reuben, Edward happened to see it. Reuben didn't want to escalate the situation. The most suitable mediator was Edward. I glanced at Edward. Come in. I want to see how you persuade me. Reuben also wanted to come in, but I blocked him. All right. I won't go in. I'll make lunch for you. Come out and eat when you're done talking. Chapter 9. As soon as the door closed, Edward hugged me. His voice was full of resentment. Why aren't you divorced yet? Waiting for the court ruling. That's too slow. I can't wait. He held me in his arms for a long time, then asked hoarsely, You're not wearing anything? Why would I wear anything at home? What if he saw? He's seen it for years. That's still not okay. He'll be your ex-husband soon. You need to avoid suspicion. Then I'll put something on now. He grabbed my hand. You just know how to annoy me. I smiled triumphantly. He asked you to come. And you came? You blocked me. I couldn't contact you. I'm in a critical period of the divorce. Don't want to cause trouble. I understand. So I'm here for you now. He held me and kissed me for a long time, then familiarly pressed me onto the bed. Want to? Not here. The room isn't soundproof. I'll be gentle. All right then. Anyway, I was leaving soon. Opportunities like this wouldn't come often. His sweat dripped onto my collarbone. Hot and burning, he lowered his head and sucked it into his mouth, then passed it to my mouth. He was really skilled, making my tailbone tingle. I voiced my curiosity. Edward, how did you kiss your first love? He didn't stop. Thought seriously for a moment. When I was driving, that girl teased me, kept her hand on my leg. I pulled her onto my lap and kissed her. Much like this. What? What kind of girl is that? This is clearly how we kissed the first time. Edward looked deeply into my eyes and said hoarsely, Yes. My heart skipped a beat. Are you saying I'm your first love? You're just realizing? Reuben never told you I've never dated? I thought Reuben was an idiot. Edward laughed softly. He is an idiot. Not cherishing such a good wife. Forcing me to make a move. I thought it was just Edward's sweet talk in the heat of the moment. Years later, I learned that Edward had coveted me for a long time. Then why are you so skilled? Edward kissed my forehead. Seeing you. Many functions automatically activated. A burst of fireworks exploded in my brain. My heart pounded like it did during my first love at 18. From then on, when I thought of first love, I had a different image in mind. Reuben finished cooking and came to call us. Edward adjusted his clothes and went out looking refreshed. My clothes were stained, so I had to change. Reuben asked in confusion, Elma, why are your eyes red? Cried after being persuaded by me. Edward said without changing his expression. Then why is your mouth swollen? She wanted to cry but felt embarrassed, so she bit her lip. Edward added, Elma, do you also think the divorce was impulsive? Reuben asked with relief. I hate myself for not being impulsive 2 years ago, I said irritably. Reuben's face froze. Edward explained, psychological counseling can't solve the problem in 1 or 2 sessions. I'll talk to her more often. Reuben gratefully patted his shoulder. Thanks. Brother, stay for lunch. Edward waved his hand, not this time. Maybe next. Before leaving, he sternly admonished me, Elma, think carefully about what I said. I rolled my eyes at him. Reuben echoed, yes, Elma, think carefully. I rolled my eyes again. Reuben made crayfish. He peeled the tails, clean and neat, and placed them on a plate. When we were dating in school, I liked eating crayfish but hated peeling them. Reuben always peeled them and pushed them to me. I thought, if he could peel crayfish for me for a lifetime, that would be great. After we got married, he got busy with his career, and the peeling fell on me. I peeled them and put them on his plate, and he didn't even say thank you. Elma, I made your favorite crayfish, Reuben said, looking pleased with himself. I picked up the plate and dumped it into the trash. As I got older, I stopped liking them. Reuben stood there, at a loss. Chapter 10. The court finally ruled in my favor. According to my demands, when I left the city, Reuben cried like an idiot. Elma, I regret it. I really regret it. I can't live without you. I never thought of divorcing you. Elma, I've been a jerk all these years. Give me another chance. Let me court you again. I'll make it up to you twice over. I waved him off and boarded the high-speed train back to my hometown. I bought the villa my mom had her eye on, got myself a golden retriever. Every day I watered plants, read books, and wrote. Life couldn't be more pleasant. Reuben kept coming over, begging for reconciliation. In early winter, he stood downstairs in thin clothes, just like back then. When I occasionally threw a tantrum, he would stand outside my dorm for a long time. I was moved to tears and fell into his arms, calling him a fool. But the girl he coaxed with a cup of brown sugar water back then had grown up. A fevered mind calmed down. I realized that the man I once loved with all my heart was not that great after all. I didn't love him anymore, no matter how pitiful he was. I wouldn't soften. Sometimes my mom visited me and scolded him when she ran into him. My daughter left her hometown to follow you, worked hard and served you for so many years. And you cheated on her. You heartless man. Don't let me see you again, or I'll beat you every time. Reuben started coming less frequently. Every day he sent good morning and good night messages. He shared interesting anecdotes he found online. His attitude was humble, just like I used to be all those years. Back then, whenever I found something interesting, my first thought was to share it with him. At first, he would call me silly. Then he stopped replying. Later, he scolded me, if you're bored, go shopping. Do you think I'm as free as you? So, I stopped sending. I didn't expect he'd become just like I was back then. I put him on my blacklist. He just used a new number. Edward said Reuben really didn't go out looking for women anymore. At drinking parties, when others urged him to drink, he would say, my wife doesn't allow it. Even after the divorce, he still called me his wife. In private, he often drank himself into a stupor. When drunk, he cried, wife, why don't you come get me? I thought absent-mindedly, if you really loved me that much, why didn't you act like it before? Edward, seeing me like this, got annoyed. He bumped into me and asked, do you regret the divorce? Elma? If you dare think about him again, try me. Edward kept visiting me. Each time, he coaxed me into bed. I said I wanted to find young men, didn't like old men. He said young men were no good. They still needed training. Even if trained, someone else might snatch them away. I thought he had a point. Why plant trees for others to enjoy? So, I settled into enjoying Edward. When he visited, he ran into my mom a few times. My mom said she'd never seen such a handsome man. His car parked in the yard was also handsome. I said, Mom, you have good taste. My mom proudly replied, of course. I always thought Reuben wasn't lucky. Is this one lucky? Whether he is or not depends on whether my daughter is willing to give him her luck. Edward was tactful. Afterward, every time he came, he visited my parents. His handsome car was filled with handsome gifts. The respect and honor my mom never experienced from the previous son-in-law, she found in Edward. Later, my mom proactively brought me my household registration book, in case you need it someday. One day, Edward found the household registration book while searching the drawer for condoms. He stopped what he was doing and immediately wanted to drag me to register our marriage. Next time, bring your household registration book too. He raised an eyebrow, smiling lightly, since the day you divorced. My household registration book has been in my car, And so, we hastily registered our marriage, having experienced a failed marriage once. I made 3 rules with Edward. First, I won't move with you. If you want a marital life, you have to come to me. Second, if you cheat, we divorce immediately. Third, I don't want kids yet. You can't force me. Edward agreed to all, saying, first, I like coming to your place, feeling the family atmosphere, so you don't need to move. Second, if I cheat, I'll leave with nothing. Third, I don't want a kid either, to disrupt the happiness I finally found. Chapter 11. On New Year's Eve, Edward and I went to my parents' house to celebrate. Since graduation, this was the first time I spent New Year's with my own parents. Reuben used to say that in his hometown, it was customary for the daughter-in-law to celebrate New Year's at her in-laws' house. Otherwise, it was considered a curse on her own parents. I believed his nonsense. Every year, I would carry big bags and small parcels to his house, neglecting my own parents. Edward was different. His mother passed away early, and he had a distant relationship with his father, so he liked coming to my house for New Year's. At the dinner table, my mom was so moved that she cried. I realized that my foolish romanticism had hurt not just me, but also my loving parents. After dinner, we went outside to set off fireworks. I was laughing so hard I lost track of time, and suddenly noticed someone standing outside the gate. It was Reuben. He had texted me the day before, saying he wanted to spend New Year's with me. I didn't reply. He said he would come to find me. I said, "Don't come." I didn't expect him to actually come. Reuben's puzzled eyes looked at me, then at Edward. He spoke in a dark tone. "Edward, why are you at my wife's house?" Edward chuckled. "Calling her your wife is inappropriate, isn't it? You're divorced, right?" "Alma is my wife." Reuben's eyes turned red. "Edward, explain yourself." Edward naturally put his arm around me. "Alma and I are married. I advise you not to go around saying Alma is your wife anymore. She is now my wife." Edward's wife. "Edward, I considered you a brother, and you dare." Reuben, enraged, threw a punch. Edward protected me, blocking the punch with his elbow. Then he kicked Reuben to the ground. Reuben, weakened by his recent drinking, had no strength to fight back. Edward's fist mercilessly landed on Reuben's face. "I've wanted to beat you up for a long time, and here you are, delivering yourself." Reuben, beaten black and blue, cried out, "Edward, we're through." Edward sneered, "That's the best thing I've heard." Later, Reuben left the Chin family business and tried to go solo. He had previously relied on Edward's resources and protection. Within a year of graduating, he had skyrocketed. His own abilities couldn't support a company. Within 6 months, his company collapsed, and he was in debt. He became the penniless Reuben once again, but this time, he no longer had the unwavering Alma by his side. Edward's side story 1. In my sophomore year of college, I returned to China to visit my family. That's when I first met Alma. Reuben was very proud of her, and he said, "This is my girlfriend, Alma." Alma was beautiful and dazzling. Girls who look like her usually have very bold personalities, but Alma was very gentle. While we were eating, Reuben peeled a crayfish for her. She was deeply moved, her big eyes sparkling as they stayed glued to Reuben. At that moment, I thought, how could a girl be so easily satisfied? Edward's side story 2. Since I was young, my parents didn't get along. My father had a mistress, and my mother argued every day. Eventually, she drove herself into madness and jumped off a building. I never felt the warmth of this world growing up. In high school, some bullies picked on me, and Reuben took a punch for me. That's how we became friends. After college graduation, Reuben asked me to start a business with him. I knew he wanted to use my resources, but it didn't matter. I let him. He brought Alma along. He said Alma gave up her future in her hometown for him. Back then, Alma's gentle eyes were filled with a steadfast light and expectations for the future. I admired her courage a lot. Edward's side story 3. Later, I got to see Alma more often. At the drinking table, Reuben was never afraid of getting drunk, because he knew his wife would come to pick him up. She would stay by his side all night, taking care of him. Everyone else had drivers to take them home. Reuben didn't have a driver, but he wasn't worried. He would sit by the roadside, no matter how late or remote, and Elma would always find him. I sat in my comfortable car, watching Elma hail a taxi with him propped up. I felt envious. To be loved unconditionally. Reuben was truly fortunate. Edward's side story 4. Reuben's abilities were lacking. He had ambition and drive, but to make a name in the business world, ambition and drive aren't enough. I found it hard to carry him. I'm naturally cold-hearted. If I can't carry someone, I won't bother trying. I gave Reuben a sinecure. Then Elma came to see me. She said she couldn't bear to see Reuben so depressed. She hoped I wouldn't give up on him. When Elma said these words, the concern and urgency in her eyes were undisguised. Even though at that time, Reuben was already playing around with other women, Elma had caught him. But after arguing with him, she turned to me for help. Is this what they call love? I didn't understand, but I wanted to experiment. I gave Reuben a branch office. I gave him more power and status. As expected, Reuben became more and more indulgent. But no matter how many women he found outside, Reuben never thought about divorce. I asked him, if you don't want to divorce, why not just go home and live a good life? Reuben's expression was complicated as he said, Elma is too obedient. So obedient that it kills any desire to conquer. Over time, it gets really boring. But she's also a good woman, and I can't bear to leave her. I sneered and said nothing. At first, Elma, like my mother back then, cried and made a scene. She did the whole monitoring and following act. Reuben got more and more annoyed with her. I wanted to stop the game. I wanted to take back the power I had given Reuben. I was worried Elma's fate would be as tragic as my mother's. Then one day, Elma suddenly calmed down. She stopped calling Reuben. She stopped asking where Reuben was or when he'd come home. She stopped clinging to him endlessly. Reuben, instead, started to panic. On Elma's birthday, the gift Reuben bought was on his desk. He canceled his evening engagements early, ready to go back to Elma. I thought they might have a perfect ending. Then in the afternoon, a little lover video called Reuben. Reuben sneakily answered, squinting with lust. In the end, he went to the lover's place. So, the ending was still tragic. I didn't expect to run into Elma at a bar that night, wearing lace under a trench coat. How was she obedient? She was wild beyond belief. I almost couldn't handle it. Afterward, having tasted the sweetness, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Anyway, her marriage was already rotten. I'd marry her, whether she's wild or obedient. I like her both ways. Edward's side story 5. Elma made 3 rules with me. I gladly accepted. I liked the harmonious atmosphere at her home and went there whenever I had time. I didn't want Elma to go back to the city where Reuben was. I would mind. I would get jealous. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have considered marriage at all. She enchanted me completely. How could I think of cheating? As for kids, I wasn't interested in raising one. Then one day, Elma, sitting on top of me, suddenly wanted a child. The reason was that her golden retriever was too lonely. She wanted to find a companion for the dog. So, we had our little rascal, Carl. I loved going home even more, because now there were 2 little troublemakers at home. I put the baby to sleep. Elma came out of the bathroom. She hooked her arms around my neck, laughing coyly. Honey, I have writer's block again. Tell me, and I'll help you analyze it. There's this ambitious little girl who climbs into the big boss's bed to change her fate. But the big boss is focused on his career, uninterested in love. I was embarrassed. Just say it. What role do I have to play this time? Honey, tonight you play the big boss. No matter how I tease you, you remain unmoved, calm and composed, with no desires. I sighed, holding my head. Elma, you really know how to challenge me. You know that as soon as I see you. No, you must act well. Elma put her hands on her hips, looking both fierce and adorable. All right. I gave in, but the second half is my turn.